you whether you want or not, right? And there's a pretty well finished pile of compost. We would have 10 acres covered like that.
Wow.
5 acres on home place. This is my home place. I only have for about 5 acres, but I have 10 yards. We have 10 acres covered like that. Oh, let me back up here. This pile here is finished. See, it's pretty black. This is almost finished. We had a 10-inch rain. But pretty soon I had compost tea running out of that pile with a 10-inch rain. So I drained it across the road right here, behind this row of brush. And that rain was in 87. Well, this is what the grass looked like in 88. 88 and 89 are 2 dry years. This is what the grass looked like where the compost tea ran in 88, even though it was a dry year.
Wow.
That's where no compost tea ran. See? Compost tea, no compost tea. These pictures were taken within the same 5 minutes. Compost tea. See, that's what makes it work. The
right.
compost is the mulch and the liquid form. And now let's jump forward to 1989, that same spot. And that spot stayed like that. There's where no tea ran. Like 88 and 89 are 2 real dry years. Now, let's jump forward to, this was 2002 or somewhere along there, 5 years later. This is where that compost tea ran.
Right.
It'll make a difference. Once you get the soil built up and you're not harvesting from it, it maintains it, see?
Right.
Because nothing goes away. It grows up in the plant grows back down, feeds the soil. It grows up in the plant composts back down to the soil. It'll continue on. This is Rodale Research Farm up in Montquaney, Pennsylvania. Those are the people that put out Prevention and Organic Gardening magazine. I learned to know them, and the owner would come visit me and stay with us, and I would go down there and stay on their farm and everything. And that was a 330-acre farm, but 100 acres was set aside strictly for research. And this research plot, this was Dr. Dick Harwood Organic section. This is Cornell University conventional section. This is corn, planted the same day, same seed, same operator. You see what the organic corn is doing and what the conventional corn is doing? How is that possible? No irrigation.
Wow.
No irrigation. You know Dr. Jerry Parsons. You heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Horticulture series, wow. Used to live in this neighborhood. They still live right there somewhere. Anyway, when he first came to San Antonio, he was, his PhD was in apples, but the city hired him as a horticulturist, pot plants. Anyway, I got to know Jerry right away. He's wild. Pretty smart. One of the smartest people I ever had. He's wild. He's from Tennessee. He's not a Texan. Anyway, I tried to talk compost with Jerry, and Jerry said, Malcolm, compost still a good mulch, you still got it fertile. I said, try some. He said, Beck, I don't need to try it. Meanwhile, there's a guy came to San Antonio, went in competition with me, and he found me, and he asked me if we were going to talk to each other, get along together. I said, fella, if we could ever educate the people to uses and the needs of compost, neither one of us could ever make enough. He says, I like that. He says, I'll never cut your prices. He said, in fact, I'm going to make a better compost for you and sell it higher. I said, fine, suits me. Well, he's making pretty good compost, all right, from Lucky Feedlot. But he knows how to sell it. You got to find organic gardeners to sell compost. See, and I was organic for years, and I knew all the organic gardeners. Called me one day, he said, Malcolm, I'm not selling anything. Well, I ain't going to tell him how to sell. But a thought struck. I said, you know, Henry, I said, the Extension Service needs to know about compost. Dr. Parsons is over in your neighborhood. Take a bunch of bags and just dump it on his lawn. Here's his address. I said, if he catches you, tell him I sent you. So by the time he was dumping the third bag, Jerry come out and said, hey, fellow, what the hell you doing? He said, well, Malcolm said you want some of my compost. Jerry said, that damn Beck. Okay, just dump it out. I'll haul it out in the garden. So Jerry got his wheelbarrow on the shovel and he hauled it out to his garden. But he left a dirty spot, so he got his water hose and he washed that dirty spot in. Well, that was, August, I think, something like that. Anyway, that spot really came out green. Made the rest of his yard look like hell. So he went and got out his fertilizer people gave him, went over the whole yard with chemical fertilizers, and that spot just got thicker and greener. Jerry called me. He said, "Get over here. I want to show you something." When I drove up, I saw the problem. Jerry came out of the house and he said, "That spot bogs my lawnmower down." He said, "I can find it by walking across it in the dark." He said, "It never shows any insects or diseases like the rest of the lawn does." He said, "But the strangest thing is," he said, "if I don't irrigate, that little thin stuff wilts, but that big, tall, thick green stuff, it should wilt first, and it never wilts." Then he said, "Beck, if you can duplicate that, you won't have enough compost to sell." We got Jerry Parsons' attention finally. Well, there's Jerry, 33 years ago, or whatever it was. He's putting out my compost and a competitor's compost. And that was in October we put that out. Well, there's where my compost was. This was a competitor's compost. This was a control area in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 1983. That's when that was. If you can remember back that far, in 1983, over Christmas time, we had the most damaging freeze that ever occurred in the state of Texas. You probably weren't too old in yet, was he?
I remember back in the 80s there was a huge snow, like a couple of feet high, but is this not it? I think that was 85.
This was 83.
Okay.
This was 83. I mean, it killed live oak trees. It damaged trees all over Texas. It blew the bark off of trees. It was 83. Anyway, right after that freeze, Jerry called me. He said, Malcolm, he said, your two composted areas, they're going to be dead when the spring comes because they were still growing. They were still green. Guess what? When the spring came, there was only 2 areas in that whole neighborhood that didn't have freeze damage. Parsons couldn't get over it. About 3 weeks later, he called me. He said, Beck, Beer, bring you a magazine article I want you to read. He came right out and threw this magazine down. It was an article. Some young PhD was further north. He had put compost on a lawn, 1/2 inch thick, in the fall, just like we did, everything same. And he got the same results. Jerry said, Malcolm, call that guy or write that guy and find out how compost does that. I said, well, why don't you? He said, well, I'm supposed to know. I said, Jerry, I don't know, you don't know, and I guarantee you that guy don't know any more than we do. I said, I need to know that it works. However, I think I figured out how it works. Dr. Jerry Quisenberry put me on this. Anytime you can really give a plant all the carbohydrates and minerals it needs, and all the humus in the soil it needs, the sap in it is going to load up with minerals and carbohydrates. And when it's loaded with minerals and carbohydrates, it's like salt water. See, salt water with the mineral in it don't freeze until it gets down 28 or below. Well, if a plant is loaded up with minerals, it won't freeze until the bush.
Right.
And it didn't even freeze. I don't know, it was down in the teens and it still didn't freeze. Of course, it's close to the ground, getting temperature out of the ground. And I'll explain more. It works. You can't beat it.
Right.
Parsons became my biggest promoter of compost. He had a TV program, a radio program, and wrote an article in a newspaper. And brother, my sales jumped because he told the world. There's a guy who worked for the Crenshaw Duguay Turf Farm, and he promotes buffalo grass. One time everybody promotes buffalo grass because it takes less water. So he had buffalo grass both sides of the sidewalk. On one side of the sidewalk, he put compost, the other side he didn't. So look what compost will do to buffalo grass.
Wow.
Everybody that used compost cut their watering up to 80%. Joe Bradford cut his 85%. This is Nelson Wolf Ballpark. We got compost on it. Look at that turf. That's south of town. Anyway, with that picture then, one of my employees had 2 kids in high school excelling in sports, so he took that picture and explained this to the school where they went. And they told him, oh no, our kids can't play in compost, they'll get infections or diseases. So he went to the next school. They told him the same thing, but this time Paul was loaded. He said, well, is it all right to let these kids play in Dirsban, 2,4-D, all the chemicals they put
Spray
on
out
iron.
there.